Something epic is coming. If we don't have the link to it, but this is a great video from The Onion that I thought really, really. It's one of those things where I'm actually kind of jealous. Like that's when I know it's a good idea. When when I see it, I'm like, damn it, I should have thought about that. It's one of those things. And this was one of the skits that I saw, and it's basically Tesla was coming out with a brand new type of explosion that they've come out with, as if they're marketing it, and they were actually able to take real footage from I believe people at SpaceX
Of actual batteries
celebrating.
yeah.
Not batteries. They actually took people from SpaceX in the footage this did happen. Like if you look at it, where their Falcon 9 has exploded over 9 times, like in a row. And the
Yeah.
SpaceX crew, they're like celebrating because they, it's like, oh, we got valuable data. It's like, did you? Like, really? Are you like, you worked that hard and it just
Let's test this
exploded?
hypothesis over and over.
Exactly. Let's just keep on doing more explosions. And they were able to link that into, the Tesla battery explosions, which is interesting, by the way, because the batteries that BYD has come out with now in China, a lot of those are solid state sodium that don't have the catastrophic fire hazard as the lithium ion that Tesla uses.
Right.
And not only do they charge faster and they work better, but they don't have to worry about. Have you ever seen? I don't know, man. I told you I sent you that text of like there's way too many crowds, and authority do kind of freak me out. I'm automatically suspect, and that's why. The fact that crowds of people can celebrate like that when all of that time, expense, and work just leads to essentially what do they call it? They don't call it an explosion anymore. They call it
A catastrophic failure or something like that.
they don't even call it that. It's like a, a predetermined missile launch conclusion, or some really sanitized
Right.
version of basically a failure.
Yeah, some
Right.
political speak. Gloss it over.
Yeah.
Nothing to see
Yeah.
here, folks. Um,
Nothing to see here. And it is a great video, but it really gets to the root of like that whole Elon Musk and Musketeer Muskrats
the
crowd
mentality, the cult.
psychology,
Yeah.
and exactly the cult of Elon that he's built up, which of course doesn't seem to be working out very well.
Speaking of which, we have a great example of that right here with the with some rando on the internet. Gotta love those internet randos. Basically asking why SpaceX is crashing right now, and I mean, apparently he didn't listen to the podcast. So
Yeah, but Danny, that's what they're good at. That's what they celebrate, right?
yeah,
They're really good at crashing. Now, remember what I said last time when I saw the muskrats and like the SpaceX investors, like, and even like the formal, like, people like from hedge funds or that run real money, like like real, like run real portfolios for like retirees and so forth. They were trying to like massage the valuation of SpaceX and everything like that. And I said the whole thing to me looked like lemmings. And this is exactly what we're seeing, right?
well,
Lemmings, they fall off the cliff,
I mean, like
right? They
this.
follow one another.
I mean,
Exactly.
at least if you got in at the very beginning, you didn't lose money yet.
Could have
But
sold it, right?
yeah, but if you got in on the second or third day and you didn't take profits or cut your losses, you're kind of hurting right now. So I thought
Now,
this was funny, and but not only that, it's this guy just like, what? Why? I have no idea.
right. And it's like, what was that? It's like, explain to me like I'm a 9-year-old,
Right.
why SpaceX is crashing. And it's like, well, 9-year-old, like, usually for companies to have high valuations, they need something called profit.
Yeah.
The problem with SpaceX is they've never been
Well,
profitable.
I remind
In
you that that's
fact,
I remind you that that's
yeah,
the
go ahead.
reason. I remind you that that's the reason why they weren't automatically granted access to the S&P 500 is
Right.
because they
That's why they
demand.
had to go in the NASDAQ.
They demand two. I'll have to fact check this, but I believe it's 2 quarters of continuous growth that they haven't been able to do, even two.
Right. Right. Exactly. Now, contrast this, right? SpaceX just is like a cartoonish example, but like aside from very few of the companies that we ever talk about on this podcast, one thing that you can always say is they have a profitable business and a proven business model that works. And I think that's going to be part of the problem when it comes to a lot of these AI valuations that come up. Don't get me wrong, there is a real, like, it is a useful tool. Large language models have a place in the economy, right? I'm not saying that at all. I'm not necessarily a full Luddite. However, no one's been able to really, aside from Figma, which we've covered on the podcast before, of actually implementing AI in a for profitable business that hasn't
Successfully.
works in an economic niche that successfully actually brings about, efficient
Yeah,
products,
typically the
right? Brings
model
products
is
to market, profits,
it's like a
right?
cookie cutter model. Like if you are a CEO, you're expected to roll in AI and cut 30% of your workforce. You get a talking to from the board, and that's just like the template. So if you look at what the trend is now, it's like if you're a CEO, either you do that or you resign. Right? Because otherwise you get a talking to from the board. There's really no impetus to say, "Hey, well, let's step back here. Let's see how do I implement this successfully rather than just rolling it out blanket and slashing the workforce for no reason."
Yeah, it's scenarios like this where I do again, it's like it's that thing of crowds because all the shareholders at the board meetings are expecting the CEO to basically do magic with
Mhm.
AI, right? Just based off of essentially nothing,
Yep.
based off of what they assume
Well, and
should be done with it.
don't forget CEOs aren't even technical people, right? So they have no idea what's going on either.
Right, exactly. Right. So, and they are, I do understand where they would like be put between a rock and a hard place where their board members are either going to like vote them out or they have to do something with the AI.
That's it.
You know
That's
what I
literally
mean?
the
Like that, but that's
situation that we're
right.
seeing. Yep.
That's when you have to actually be creative. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? It's like you can implement AI in certain areas. And I don't know, that's where creativity would come into play depending on how your business model works.
Yep.
Right. So, it can be done, but again, it's where unqualified people are making decisions that affect millions and even billions of people with large capital allocations on the line that don't know what the hell they're doing.
Hmm.
And there's going to be I guarantee it. Not only has there already been mass consequences because of it, a lot of people have been fired needlessly
Hmm.
because of this, but it's that sort of crowd psychology is just going to continue to roll through,
Yep.
unfortunately,
Well,
because we haven't found behavioral or structural ways to fix it yet.
speaking of
So,
people who do know what they're doing,
yep,
this is a great example. Petrobras is a favorite of the show. We've discussed it
we
at
are.
least 2, 3
Yep.
episodes. This just to put this in perspective, new output record at 1.1 million barrels per day. That is roughly 1/10 of what Saudi Arabia and the U.S. They're roughly neck and neck exports every day. So one
One
tenth,
company,
okay.
and that's
Yes,
one company,
one
though.
co wait, wait,
Right.
wait. One company in one field, oil field, right?
Correct.
So I would
Yeah.
have to look up their total production, but that is significant.
Right. And that's where people like you and me, we look at that stock and then we look into like what's the valuation at right now with PBR?
Uh,
It's
we'll
it's
go
like
over in
really
a
low,
second. It's
right?
like
Yeah.
16 and change off the top of my head, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, but like we see the small valuations or whatever in the
Yep.
overall
Actually,
geopolitical
let's
situation.
take a look at it right now. Why not?
Yeah.
So where are we?
And they have
So
high dividends too. So it's
yep,
like
16
buy
and
it
change.
cheap, buy it cheap, hold on for the dividend payout.
Right, so clearly the news hasn't been priced in, as we say, to this because we're still at lows. We're still at great prices. I've bought this multiple times already with the red lines indicating where I got in at. I'm a little underwater right now, and I'm okay with that. Um,
Yeah. It pays out dividend. So it's like, I think their cost of production is below like well below like $30 to $15 per barrel.
Mm-hmm.
So they're indefinite. They're basically printing cash. So
And
it's like, I don't know, PBR for me, at least in the Western hemisphere, that's kind of like an accumulator. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like if I get money
correct.
every month, I'll buy 1 or 2 shares if it's at a low, and just
Likewise,
accumulate that.
especially
Yeah,
with the dividend that it pays, and yet another reason we keep bringing this back to the issue with Hormuz, which, despite all the lip service, has not been resolved. Surprise! And so this is yet another reason why we're going to be focusing on stuff that's onshore, stuff with its own proven infrastructure. And let's just say that this was magicked away right now, let alone the attacks and the risk in the Middle East. Why, as a American producer, would you be sending your ships to that area of the world when you could
right,
stay in your own hemisphere, stay in your own lane, and patronize your neighbors?
right. Mm-hmm. Yep. And not just that, but during this whole fiasco, there have already been contracts and trade agreements signed between like Canada and South Korea and Japan and Canada and Japan and the United States and all of these big oil, you know what I mean, like importing nations have already lined up contracts for alternate sourcing.
Right.
So it will be interesting to see down the road, like not how many ships leave Hormuz. By the way, there was it yesterday, I believe, one of the ships was attacked on the
Yeah, I
Gulf
heard
of
that
Oman,
too.
I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. So, but that, like, how many? It's not going to be how many ships leave, which there's still thousands locked up,
Mhm.
right? But like, how many go back?
Right. How many are
That's
able
going to
to
be
go
right.
back?
Yeah. Are they going to go there? They're going to reroute to Canada or to Brazil, or we don't know yet. It's got to
Exactly.
rewire
So
somewhere.
part of to shift gears a little bit, part of our theme in investing is investing in stuff that we know about, right? And so what I bring to the table is finance and tech, oil. I've been following and trading oil since 2016 or so. Zach has a uniquely rare ability to have he just has an encyclopedic knowledge about organic chemistry, biochemistry, and so he's uniquely inclined to comment on some biotech stocks. So why don't you
Right.
tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here
Yeah,
and how that leads to something?
biotech and pharma specifically. I'm formally trained as a biomedical scientist and in neuroscience. So those are sort of like my two specialties, I guess you could say. Now, so what causes cancer? What causes cancer is essentially it's when there's a mutation, usually damage to the cell, to the extent where the proteins necessary that trigger the normal cell cycle of replication, okay, they get altered such that it just replicates and replicates and replicates without any of the normal stop feedback signals. One of the key stop feedback signals is the RAS MP kinase. It's essentially RAP MPK is a signal cascade that triggers the cell cycle for mitosis in the cell.
So it's like a break. It's like the brakes.
Correct. That's the main protein responsible for that is RAS and the RAS MPK signal cascade pathway. When I took cell bio, I'm not sure if I sent you a slide with this or not, but like we go over in detail, like just not only the building blocks, how these proteins are built by by individual amino acids, but how they function in the cell, how they're affected by different pHs, every single detail that you can go through. And we have to memorize all the pathways. We have to understand how they operate in different environments, what can damage them, what mutations can change what. It's very, very complex. But this is one particular pathway that I'm very, very intimately acquainted with. Let's just say I've spent hours and hours and hours with flashcards, drawing diagrams, and so forth with this specific signaling cascade. And it is, I don't want to say the holy grail, right, as far as cancer goes, but it is definitely the most promising research locus with
Interesting.
respect to cancer and cancer research. And some of the companies that we're going to go over actually own most of the IP and have some of the most successful medications that are actually able to not only identify RAS mutations, but uh, sort of break and throttle the signal through that
Very interesting. So
casket.
is that related
Yeah.
to what we're seeing here?
No. This is a different thing entirely. This is something that I've also worked with in the lab that's really, really cool. That was sort of cutting edge that we were working with in the lab, let's see, around the time when I graduated, which was around 2011. And it's called small interfering RNAs. One of the stocks that I picked up earlier in the week after I started looking into companies with deep IP portfolios and good structural setups was they own most. There's only two companies that own most of the IP where they can do stuff with small interfering RNAs. Now, small interfering RNAs, I was sort of skeptical of uh, in the beginning, but then when I saw like what you can actually do with them, it was quite surprising. Like you can feed these little RNAs into the cell, right? And what they are is they're complementary to certain mRNAs in the endosome, in the nucleus, in a cell. So it's like if you want to disrupt a certain pathway or even just cancel it entirely, right? For instance, a lot of mutations, we already know the mRNA that causes for certain pathologies. If we only had the way to sort of like interrupt it early on in the process, we could terminate the pathology before it actually even manifests,
Mhm.
right? And some of the companies that we're going to go over actually
Sure.
own most of the intellectual property with small interfering RNAs.
So we do have quite an extensive list. So let's start with ions. I don't believe that we have covered that before. Yeah, this is a
Okay.
brand new take for us with the
Mm-hmm.
pharmaceuticals. We've been previously covering oil and commodities as you listeners of the show are aware. So here we have some really good technicals. We do like if we want to zoom out a little bit, when in doubt, zoom out. Let's see what the overall pattern is. Some volatility, which is to be expected with pharmaceuticals. There's various reasons for that, but we are looking to break a high here. The level to watch would be if we could break through this high here at 82, 8642 ish. Looking for entries. I'd say this is a fairly wide range from $20 up to 86. There's a good chance that some retracements here unless they're pricing in say an FDA approval or something like that. Oftentimes when the FDA approves a drug or a treatment or whatever, then you see a pharmaceutical stock really just go off to the races. But
Right. That's what's happened. I was able to when I started this, it was I believe over the weekend. I believe I bought on Monday at like 69.70, something like that. And it took off and I have noticed that like as soon as the F and they've got that's part of why I was so bullish on them in the very beginning as soon as I started looking at their IP portfolio because not only do they already have the licenses for certain drugs that are already profitable. But the FDA, throughout the past, I want to say 2 weeks, has recently listed off like 3 approvals, giving them the
right.
nod for yes, this does work for this medication X works for treatment Y, and then that's what's been rallying their stock. Here's the thing, though, is they're this is an interesting company when I looked at the structure of it too, because they do pour about 70, 80% of their profits right back into R&D.
Yeah,
right?
that's actually a really good quality, I guess. Most companies just take on more debt. So they
Right.
don't even bother to pay off the debt that they have. They just more.
Right. Instead, this company actually, and that's kind of why I was so bullish on it, because I don't know, me being a researcher myself, that's really what you're supposed to do with profits in the first place. And the R&D that they're actually doing, they're leading to, it's like leading to profitable ventures,
Sure.
right? So being, yeah, like around $70 isn't inexpensive, but at the same time, when you already look at the benchmark
Mhm.
successes that they've already had, and then you look at their IP portfolio and the potential that they,
Right.
are still gaining traction on, and the fact that they do currently cycle their profits into R&D still to sort of drive that engine. That's why structurally I do like this company in
Yep.
particular. Yeah.
And so, so with Halozyme, excuse me, pharmaceuticals, therapies, excuse me, tremendous rally here since we're looking at the day chart. So since 2020 or so, I mean, we've basically, 5, 6x. Um, and if we want to look at opportunities, some pretty substantial volatility here. So 67.39, we have this pivot over here to 74.23. Target would be 82.04. So let's, keep an eye on this one for sure.
Yeah, this one I'm not as bullish on. I will say they do generate a lot of free cash flow, and I do think that we're going to see that continue moving forward, though, because their real sort of like breakthrough product is actually basically they own the patent rights to molecules that make drug delivery and absorbance way easier. For instance, like subcutaneous or even dermal applications for certain medications, because they own the patent rights for the technology that actually it breaks down, I believe, the hyaluronic acid complexes in the skin briefly, which allows the transport of the medication through the dermal layer.
Wow,
So
that's really interesting.
yeah, so what you're talking about here is more like instead of just like a drug company, they're more like a drug delivery company. But the mere fact that they've opened up that application method, right? That's sort of like the sky is the limit with respect to like they can then partner. You see what I'm saying? Like
I
you
do.
can
Yeah.
you can safely deliver all sorts of different medications that we couldn't before.
So,
Which, yeah, that's pretty high value right there. That's
yeah.
one small structural thing. So
That's pretty interesting stuff. The next one is actually, believe it or not, a personal favorite. This was my family bought this years and years ago, like in the like I want to say 2009, just to give a number, but it was around that era. And yeah, we sold out. This was a like 5x profit over here. We sold out around $100. I remember that. So yeah, longtime favorite. And if you remember my little lecture on Elliott wave, that's exactly what we're seeing here. So we do look like we are in another push here. Again, this is really, really broad, broadly speaking. But if we zoom into like the day chart, we can actually get some decent levels for this. I would imagine this does look pretty levelly, and relative agreement on those levels. Strong support at 121 with 109.99. Roughly 110 being a 50% retracement. So, areas you might want to look at to purchase. I noticed with the other two, they did not provide a dividend. This one is going to be at 2.58%. That is healthy. Okay, so some stocks they give you like 0.1 or 0.2%. Like why even do that, right? 2.58, obviously not a dividend king, but it's a healthy dividend. So yeah, big favorite of Gilead's a big favorite of mine, but I haven't been keeping up with them recently, like as far as what
yeah,
they're doing.
um, they recently just bought a bunch of other companies as well as IP.
Mhm.
So they've had some like sort of headwinds, but they're recently picking up a lot of market in the HIV space, and they are profitable. Uh,
Mhm.
so Gilead's just sort of like a known quantity, if you will. But what I'm trying to get at now is, even though we've seen a recent uptick, uh, they still have drugs in the pipeline, especially in the HIV space, that could likely move their profits forward. The reason why I wanted Gilead specifically here is they have an impressive portfolio, and they are one of the few stocks in the space that do offer a dividend yield.
So I, I
So,
um I do want to make a point about owning a portfolio of companies and IP and stuff like that. If you remember when BlackBerry, kind of went the way of the dodo in terms of a phone, BlackBerry stock is actually a pretty good buy and a favorite of mine personally. Why? Because they just have an extensive portfolio of IP. And I know this because I happen to know the person personally who did the valuation of them. And it was very difficult for him to evaluate the value of the IP because it wasn't productized, right? Like when you evaluate, there's a couple different ways you could do it. When you want to evaluate the value of, say, a software product or something like that, obviously, if it's productized, you look at revenue, projected revenue, financy type metrics like that. If it's not, or if it's a social metric, like a social media type thing, you look at it's the number of users squared. If you don't have that, you're kind of up a creek, right? Unless you take as an absolute kind of default, you can use the number of hours used to produce it, right? Because the theory, it's not always true, but you could see where I'm going with this, is that the amount of person hours, man hours to produce this product times how much you pay per hour, right? Are you hiring experts or are you hiring, minions to slap something together? That's kind of a rough estimate for the value of that IP. So just a little aside on valuing IPs and the importance of having a good uh, you know um, selection of different IP in your portfolio.
right, right.
So the
And
next, oh, sorry, did you have something
yeah,
else?
not just Gilead. I'm going to be honest. Like, as far as like what they're doing, they're sort of like I don't want to say a mom and pop, but sort of like a bread and butter basics pharma company. If
Mhm.
you want to get into the space, this is more like an income focused, safe
Yeah.
bet. If
Well,
it's a
they
vanilla stock, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're well established. I wouldn't say that they were. Like, I remember researching them back in the day. They weren't doing anything super hyper risky, but they were, a good solid something to chug along. Now, this one, on the other hand, Revolution Medicines, I would say we've missed the boat, or at least if you haven't purchased this, before this huge rally, you've probably missed the boat just because buying now, this is on the day chart. So where are we here? This is August of 25, so almost a full year. Granted, we haven't seen a significant retracement, so that could be a red flag, or it could mean that there. I mean, look at the growth here. We're going from 40 to roughly 180 or so. So that is significant.
Mm, yeah.
Yep.
And just generally speaking, they have an impressive portfolio. They, a lot of sort of like regenerative medicine stuff, which is kind of interesting. But
And
um,
this,
yeah.
again, favorite chart pattern here, up and to the right.
Hmm. And steady growth, right?
Steady growth. It does look like they pay a dividend. It is a bit pricey. This is something I would, although the growth looks fantastic, it is something I would wait for a retracement on. Um, you know, if you're stingy, wait for 155, 55, and 50% retracement. You might not get that. But again, I would be more concerned with getting a good price, just seeing as how pricey it is. I'm sure it's worth it. It does pay a dividend at 277, so that's
Hmm.
not that's not shabby either.
Again, this is sort of a mainstream vanilla growth. stock in the biopharma complex.
Okay.
So deep
Uh,
portfolio, deep IP, profitable.
Yeah, so these
Basically.
are the kind you want to build a long-term portfolio with. Just start
Right.
stacking them when you can. Not always going to get the best price, but it's something you want to keep owning because, on a monthly time frame, sure you might see it underwater, but on, 5 years from now, you're going to be impressed with your proceeds. So it really depends on what your time frame is for these types of things. I would say that's probably not the case for this one, just based on, yeah, well, maybe I'm wrong. So we do see this nice rally here, relative, huge amount of volatility until here. So we did break highs here at roughly $200. It does not look like it's going to test that in the near future. So is this one of those kind of vanilla companies, or it looks like there's a reason for these drastic
Right.
drastic rallies?
This is actually a company that I'm very, very, very familiar with. Um, I've been working closely with Jazz for years. They own the one medication uh, that's actually used to successfully treat narcolepsy. But they're expanding their portfolio, which is and are getting more grants from the FDA to sort of broaden their scope, which is why you're seeing this recent growth.
Okay.
So, but I have worked very closely and intimately with this company, and yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about it in my experience. So, whether it's overvalued now or not, I can't really speak to that.
I would say, yeah,
But
just looking at the chart, it looks a little top heavy. I would prefer to see a retracement. And just because I've said this before, it's worthy of saying it again. Just because you do see a retracement doesn't mean that's a bad thing. In fact, it's a good thing. If you see just consistent high after home run after home run, you're looking at kind of bubble territory. And
right.
even if the stock is good and they're doing well and they're producing, it's just asking for a huge profit taking and a huge retracement. So you want to be on the profit end of that rather than on the stop loss end of that. So this one, usually I call this the death spiral. Usually I stay away from stocks like this. However, we do see this attempt here breaking recent relative highs from back in 2024. So it does look like we're kind of on the upswing here. And the good news is there's a huge amount of growth potential just based on history. So, as stocks grow, they hit targets based on their previous history. Next target being roughly 2132. If we really want to get aggressive over time, we'd be looking at roughly 60. And if we, when in doubt, zoom out, if we can kind of take a look at just recently, most of the growth here looks like it's been relatively recent, right? So we're talking about a relative, 2x, 2x increase in value since basically this year.
Yes, this is company in particular. They own a lot of really impressive IP in the psychedelic space and in the nootropic neurogenesis space. So it's like with respect to that, I believe this is one of them that I picked up earlier in the week at a pretty cheap price, and it's already gone up substantially. And we're going to see that that's actually the theme overall is the combination of psychedelic treatment starting to come to the fore, as well as I don't want to say brain boosting or
Nootropic type,
neuroprotective type. Yeah,
yeah, there's a term for it, like something hacking, like not biohacking, but there's like a trendy term for it. You know what I
the
mean?
neurohacking.
Maybe. I thought it's something a little bit more like sophist, but
Mm,
Elon Musk kind of buzzword.
right.
Anyway, So the next one on the list, yeah, that's right. It was a tie. I was actually, before I move on, there was actually, you said that you bought it recently and made a profit. That is perfectly, as you see from the chart, that is perfectly understandable. And the thing that you have, if you want to turn a profit really quick, what you have to look at is the beta of the stock, right? So that's essentially the volatility. So that's like how much does it span in a day? Okay, there's other metrics for that, ADR, ATR, the average true range, the average daily range. But basically, if you have a stock with a small beta, those are really good for your long-term bets, the ones that just kind of chug along and gradually increase. If you want to turn a profit, you're going to be wanting to look at something like this. My guess is that this has a beta probably about 5-10%, which is pretty high, as you see
Mhm.
from these swings that it's doing. So just something to keep in mind if you're looking to do that and turn a quick profit. This one looks pretty volatile, so when in doubt, zoom out. Um, and another death spiral. However, very, very good, very promising technicals here recently. We broke a relative high, which, if it's a really true, like if I was to zoom, if I was to cut this part out and you just saw this, I'd be like, stay away, man. But
Right.
this tells me that there's some kind of fundamental paradigm shift within the company or a purchase of IP and acquisition or something like that. So this is
I
this is what you
believe
want to
this.
see.
I believe this company owns the deepest IP portfolio for psychedelic medicine in particular that uh, have recently gotten like FDA approval. They just finished phase 3
Yep.
FDA approval and so forth, and the results actually are sort of like best in the business
Yeah,
so
so
far. Yeah.
so this is this goes back to like again, I like to stay in my lane because with tech and finance and things like that, it's less likely that you're going to. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's less likely that you're going to see something like this. In pharma, that's not the case, right? And a lot of times, in pharmaceutical companies will and I should be deferring to you on this, but I'm just sharing with what I know in the sense that they will spend maybe 20 years developing a drug, and then the FDA says, nope, sorry, we're not going to allow it. What does that do to their stock price? It crushes
Right.
it, right? On the other hand, it could go the opposite way. So it looks like finally something stuck. Perhaps they were, again, I'm just speculating here. Probably would be easy to look this up, but if they were, say, working on this for years and years and years, just expecting that one day the FDA would, approve the use of psychedelics and so forth, that would be the reason for this, right? And then all of a sudden,
Right.
here we go. So, interesting take on that. Especially with the psychedelics.
Right, but that's why I think you've seen this recent movement because
Correct.
as we all know, the psychedelic space has opened up in a regulatory sense, but
Exactly.
uh,
Yeah.
but that company in particular, they own like the deepest portfolio of the neuro and psychedelic space and have completed the successful FDA,
Yep.
protocols.
Yeah,
So
so if you're into that or see growth potential in that, which I do, then that would be interesting to look at. As I recall, let me just go back to that. I mean, we're still at 657. That's again, if you could just maybe spare that extra burrito at lunch, you could buy a share of
well,
this,
right.
right?
That's what I was looking at when I was looking at the specifics of this, and I was looking at the stock valuation and what recently has happened. I'm like, you know what? There's a plausible story here where things could actually work out to the upside.
So
Is that worth $6?
correct. So
You
so
know,
that is a typical successful risk management story. The risk management is like, okay, what is the upside to this versus what is the cost? Six
right,
bucks, I'm in.
right, exactly. So it's not going to hurt to put, like pick up 2 shares or whatever, and just
Yeah.
say, hey, it could, really,
And I've had
really work
that.
out.
I've had that where it's like there was like a penny stock that I was kind of looking at, kind of saw some it was like $2. And I was like, you know what? Let me buy 20 bucks worth. And now that's worth over like $120. So,
Right, exactly.
it's it can't hurt. But I was okay. The crux of the risk management was I was okay with losing that if it didn't go my
Right.
way. So Takeda sounds like a Street Fighter character.
It's a Japanese multinational.
All
And
right.
again, they have a big, the reason why you're seeing this large dramatic dip is because recently, this was the company that owned the patent to Vyvanse.
Oh, yeah, you were telling me
And
about
that,
them.
that recently expired.
Hmm.
However, that doesn't mean that the company doesn't post profits, which they do, right? It doesn't mean that they don't have other IP, which is
Or,
valuable.
or other stuff in
And
the
that does,
pipeline.
they also have other stuff in the pipeline that looks very, very promising. That is also gone through all the jumped over the legal hurdles. Interestingly enough, this one also has successfully completed some research in the psychedelic space as well. So
Yeah, so essentially the play here would be that we're at a artificial low just because of that patent expiring, but we're really betting on the future here in the sense that it's still a good company, they're still cash flow positive, and they have other stuff in the pipeline that's probably like, that's likely to stick.
mhm.
Moving on to the speculative PHGE. All right, so again, Death Spiral here. This is interesting. From 2000. So let's what's going on here?
Yeah, this is. I wanted to show you this. This is an example. Now, this is something that actually puzzles me to a great deal because this Phage is a company that their whole thing is so phages are viruses. Okay, so you have like bacteriophages and so forth, which are viruses that actually kill bacteria. Okay, and they've actually been able to uh, program certain viruses to then use those viruses as treatments for certain infectious diseases with a great amount of success, which is fantastic because that goes to show that if we really wanted, we have a solution to, like, okay, so there's antimicrobial and antibiotic resistant bacteria out there, like tuberculosis is uh, is coming back,
Hmm.
right? And you can throw all the medication in the world at it, and it doesn't matter. And if you remember historically, tuberculosis used to kill and infect a bunch of people,
Well, yeah, I
right?
remember that from my microbiology class. Is that it has it's I believe it's in the same family as leprosy, and they have a very thick kind of cell wall that's very hard to penetrate with medication.
Yeah, it's a mycoplasma is an extremely small bacteria. It's not. It's kind of weird. It's with they call it a degenerate bacteria even because it doesn't
So it has a nice crypto portfolio.
exactly. Yeah. So it doesn't have much of its own cell machinery. So it tends to infect like mitochondrial cell matrices and stuff like that to steal ATP
Yeah,
from
that's not
cells
good.
because it doesn't have its own right. So it's linked to chronic, it's chronic fatigue syndrome, and mycoplasma is a really nasty thing.
And then
Uh,
if you get it, try to get that out of there. If it's in the inner workings of the cell like that, it'd be incredibly
right.
difficult. So phage is essentially targeting that, giving treatments for
Well,
that.
not just that, but they've been working for a really long time with an impressive genetic library of sort of like atypical treatment variations, sort of using bacteria and viruses themselves, which is quite fascinating. They're sort of standalone in that. But what we're witnessing recently is just, and what I find peculiar about that, it's something I really want to look into, is I can really see the value in that. Like there's a lot that can really be done there, right? Whether it's probiotic bacteria, whether it's, you know what I mean, bacteria that can like clean systems, and they can do all sorts of crazy
Right.
things. Viruses that treat diseases, but for whatever reason, this company has been failing. And I
So
guess, right. And the only thing, I'm not sure why, I have to look into this because this is sort of like a first principles thing. They should be doing really, really well. I'm
you'd think
curious, right?
so
You would
a lot of
think,
times, I can think of so many examples of like yeah, the clubs are the best example, right? You have a club and you said nightclub where you see like people it's packed all the time and they fail. Why did they fail? Mismanagement, right? So I mean that's a example of why they could fail. There's tons of reasons why they could be. This looks like one where you're betting on it making a home run or bankruptcy. And if the company goes bankrupt, you may not get anything back, right? So if you were to buy, granted, it's 40 cents essentially.
right,
So
right, exactly.
so I mean, if you're willing to throw 10 buck, 10, 20, even $100 on this and be like, you know what, if I lose it, I mean the upside's pretty high, right? Because if we're at 40 cents, even $4 is a 10x, right? So there's another way to look at this, right? But again, that's why it's under speculatives, and I bolded this.
Right. Mhm.
um, the other one, the final one on our list is help. Is that Cybin?
Yes.
All
Mhm.
right. So zooming out again, we have another death spiral. Looks like if we go too much further, again, a risk of bankruptcy here. Not going to lie. But
Look at this though. Look at the most recent rally. This is what's interesting.
yeah, yeah, no, again, I'm not going to
Yeah,
disparage the fact that they did break a high here. That's non-trivial, but the issue is what's the motivation behind that?
they have recently they have come out with an impressive psychedelic IP portfolio that's endogenous to the company.
Oh,
That's the
okay,
only thing that I can sort of pin this to.
okay,
Again, this would be a speculative, but it's something that we're finally seeing because if you remember before, psychedelics used to be looked at as drugs, as bad,
right, right.
instead of being the entheogen sort of medicinal plants and fungi that they have been used traditionally with
Which
the religious right
correct, yeah, which
practices and
is
so forth.
from
So
my understanding why a lot of them were developed in the first place as treatments for PTSD in soldiers returning from Vietnam and the Korean War and so forth.
no, no, that's the I actually know the guy Roland Griffiths who has done. He was actually part of that whole 1960s, 70s sort of pro psychedelic movement, but he didn't like it because he saw it becoming like this cultural cachet, sort of like, limousine liberal
Yeah, yeah, like
lifestyle
like
choice.
like
And
your
he
tech
made,
CEOs who go and do ayahuasca, hoping for some revelation on what new product or new graphic
right,
user interface
right,
to
right.
implement.
He saw that in the movement at the time. So what he did is he stayed at Johns Hopkins and actually started doing the real hard-nosed research showing that he's done everything from salvinorin A to psilocybin to all sorts of things, largely sometimes in veteran populations and so forth, but in other populations as well, and actually showed the hard data to
Mhm.
back all that up. And recently we've seen, we've actually seen like the legal hurdles being broken down to
Right.
stop all of that from moving forward. So, yeah,
So
that's a
so
recent movement. We could see part of the reason why we're
could
seeing
see that
this.
pop. Yeah.
Right, right.
So to close out, I think it's always nice to review some of what we, have been touting on the show. Petrobras, as you know, we've talked about this many times. Even had a breaking news about them breaking records for production. Yet it's still under a 50% retracement here of the high. So still touting this, still adding to positions. I'm going to get to oil prices here in a second. CVX was another highly recommended. Oops, sorry, not CVX. It was CRGY, I believe. Crescent.
Yeah, Crescent's going down
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Crescent's going down. We see a lot of support. This, as you see here, I bought three different times on this, adding to
Still
the position.
profitable. You
Yep.
know, it's, I mean,
Well, again, there's nothing wrong with people say doubling down like it's a bad thing. That's not always true, right? Averaging down can sometimes bring your average entry price down. So when it does take off, you're making a lot more profit. It,
not
it
just that, but the dividend for Crescent, I believe, is around 4%,
Yes, it's
something like
uh
that. Right.
it's it's right here. I remember it, but yeah, 4.75, almost 5%, which is, my like king status. Let's see. We had MP material. What was the other Canadian started with a C and Q, was it?
CNQ, yeah,
Yep.
CNQ.
Yeah, so again, same type of chart pattern. I keep bringing this up because I still want to review oil prices. We've dug down again. Sorry for the mess with the lines here, but because the reason why it's so dense with these lines, we're not supposed to be seeing this level of action, right? We're supposed to be seeing a price hang out like this, right? The average kind of intraday volatility for oil could be around 100 ticks, which is basically a dollar. Okay, so in other words, I expect within a day for it to hang out. To put it in perspective, that's this little range here. What we've been seeing, what we've been seeing instead is this. Okay, so unprecedented times. We are digging into lows that I consider artificial. As you saw from the news articles we posted, there's really no reason for this. And even if there is, we call this, if this isn't an example of being oversold, I don't know what is. Everything's in the red here, and when that happens, we have these things called relief rallies. There's lots of reasons for them, but when they happen big, right? So a relief rally here could easily head to 76. What is my level here? 76.16. 7616 here or higher, right? Because we have this little congestion zone here. So, and as we've been stressing, there's really not a lot of fundamental impetus for this besides the job owning.
Well, not with the oil price being where it is. I think what we're seeing is a combination of factors. We are seeing ships move out of Hormuz, but we are also still seeing at the same time SPRs still dumping out, what is it, 10 million a week onto markets for free at the same time, at the exact same time as the United States and probably other countries have like increased their rig counts too. So we're seeing, I think we're seeing sort of like a Venn diagram overlap here. But the problem is this can only last for so long until those
Exactly.
start to be
Exactly.
pulled away.
Um,
So
S and P has been stuttering a little bit here too, so the broader markets have been retracing a bit. That's going to impact our picks as well. So again, both of those factors are telling me that now's the time to buy
uh,
or
so
add to
I
positions.
or yeah, that's more where I would be. I have I've already got in on some of those pharma and biotech positions that have already done pretty well. Again, not that even like not very expensive ones either. Just just some exposure.
Yep.
And I was actually surprised when Danny, when I was like, some people will just buy the S&P and whatever. And even though I'm really heavy energy overall, like I'm noticing that for whatever reason, the structure of it or whatever, it's sort of like still holding, it fluctuates like up and down, but not near as much as the indexes have been falling. Like not
Yeah,
even
and so
close.
that's why
Like,
typically having an index in your portfolio or an ETF that tracks the broadest class of markets is a good idea. Again, it helps to offset risk and stuff like that, but you have to buy it on dips, right? Because as you said, there can be some drastic swings that can put you underwater pretty quickly. So buying
yeah.
on dips for like broader index tracking ETFs that pay a dividend is a very, very sound investment plan.
No, but what I'm talking about is just like my overall portfolio compared to the S&P or the Nasdaq in particular. Like I don't know, like the S&P hasn't really looked that great, but the Nasdaq has recently been taking a hammering. Like
Because
tech has been really, yeah,
because Nasdaq is heavy in tech. Yeah.
yeah. And oddly enough, when I was looking through things, Permian Resources, again, profitable company. I think they got about a 3% dividend. They've been just hanging out, chilling,
Yep.
oddly enough. I was hoping they would drop lower. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like a 14.50 or something. But they're stubborn. They won't drop below 19, man. They're
Yep.
just staying right where they are, you know? But
Well, they can be stubborn, we can be stingy. So,
that's true.
yep. So on that note, I think it's a good time to
All
close.
right.
Thanks everyone, and see you next week.
Bye-bye.